Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Just going to give it a few seconds to let participants and attendees come in, then we'll get started. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This session is specifically designed for plan sponsors, so whether you're new to the 316 fiduciary concept or you've been considering it for some time, we've got a lot of great content to walk through today. We're going to cover what a 316 fiduciary does, why it matters for your retirement plans, and how it can make your life easier while strengthening your governance. So let's dive in. But before we get started, a quick housekeeping note. If you have any questions as we go along, please drop them into the Zoom Q&A feature, not the chat, but the Q&A box specifically. We will do our best to address as many questions as we can during the session. If we don't get to yours or we run out of time, don't worry, we will follow up with you directly afterwards. So please ask away. There are no bad questions here. Today's topic is minimizing fiduciary risk through 316 services. This is hosted by Suzanne Chulgin, our Vice President of 316 Fiduciary Services and Plan Implementation, and Tiffany Chenard, Director of 316 Fiduciary Services. So Suzanne recently joined Definity as our Vice President of 316 Fiduciary Services and New Business Implementation. With more than 25 years of experience in the retirement industry, Suzanne is a strategic leader who brings deep expertise in fiduciary services, regulatory compliance, plan design, operational efficiency, and enhancing the client experience. Recognized for her practical, results-oriented leadership, Suzanne helps organizations navigate complex requirements with confidence and clarity. Tiffany Chenard recently joined Affinity as Director of 316 Fiduciary Services, bringing over 2 decades of experience in the financial services industry. She is recognized for delivering operational excellence, enhancing risk management frameworks, and building collaborative, high-performing teams that drive results. Tiffany is a strategic and solutions-driven operations leader with extensive expertise in 316, ERISA compliance, and retirement plan governance. So we are thrilled to welcome Suzanne and Tiffany today to have them both share their expertise with our Academy community. So with that, I will hand it over to Suzanne to get us started.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to jump right in. The first slide that I'll discuss is a quick roadmap of what we're going to be covering today. We will start with the basics. What is a 316 fiduciary and who qualifies as a fiduciary under ERISA? We will then move on to the practical side. Why plan sponsors would choose to engage a 316, what types of plans tend to benefit most, and what responsibility shifts look like once a 316 is engaged. We will also talk about how a 316 works alongside your TPA and record keeper. We'll walk through liability and audit readiness and clarify how this role differs from 321 and 338 investment fiduciaries. Finally, we'll wrap up with an overview of Definity's service offerings and discuss some important regulatory developments. Tiffany will now discuss what is a 316 fiduciary and who qualifies as a fiduciary under ERISA.
Thanks, Suzanne. Again, welcome everybody. Let's start with the foundation. What exactly is a 316 fiduciary? Many people think of fiduciary responsibility in narrow terms, but the legal definition is actually much broader than you might expect. Under ERISA, anyone who exercises discretionary authority or control over a plan's management is considered a fiduciary. And many people are already serving in that capacity without even realizing it. For that reason, there are different types of fiduciaries, but our focus today is going to be on 316. A 316 specifically acts as a co-fiduciary for delegated administrative duties. In other words, rather than you as the plan sponsor handling every administrative task, the 316 assumes specific defined responsibilities. The key takeaway here is that a 316 doesn't replace you as plan sponsor, but rather it partners with you to support stronger governance and a shared accountability. Now let's talk about who qualifies as a fiduciary. And this is where it gets interesting. There are 2 categories. We have named fiduciaries and unnamed fiduciaries. Named fiduciaries are the ones you'd expect. The business owner as the 402A, the plan sponsor, the trustee, and investment advisors or managers. These are explicitly identified in the plan documents. But here's the part that catches people off guard: unnamed fiduciaries. Anyone who exercises authority or control over plan assets is considered a fiduciary under ERISA, regardless of their title. That means your CEO, CFO, controller, or even the HR manager who processes your participants' contributions could be acting as a fiduciary without knowing it. Signing the Form 5500, remitting payroll contributions, paying vendors, or making investment decisions can all trigger that fiduciary status. And with that comes real responsibility and liability. So then why would a plan sponsor engage a 316 fiduciary? So you might be asking, why do plan sponsors decide to bring on a 316 fiduciary? It typically comes down to four things: lowering fiduciary risk, streamlining administration, strengthening governance, and giving internal teams more capacity. By engaging a 316, specific administrative fiduciary responsibilities are taken on by a dedicated fiduciary partner, which results in less compliance exposure for you and less operational strain on your internal resources. A 316 fiduciary brings focused expertise in ERISA governance and regulatory requirements. This will allow your teams to stay focused on running the business rather than having to manage the day-to-day complexities of plan administration. Suzanne will now walk us through where a 316 fiduciary might be a good fit and cover the key responsibilities that come with the role.
Thanks, Tiffany. So not every plan needs a 316 fiduciary, but certain situations can make for a really strong fit. Some common fits include plan sponsors with limited HR benefit staff are usually a natural match, especially where they may not have the bandwidth to manage all the compliance requirements. Next, growing companies are also another great fit. As they scale and compliance complexities increase, a 316 helps keep administration and oversight on track. Plans that have had past operational issues or need corrections can also benefit significantly. A 316 partner helps prevent those problems from reoccurring. For example, a plan sponsor consistently submits employee deferrals deposits 7 to 10 business days after payroll, even though they have the ability to reasonably segregate the assets within 2 to 3 business days. This is determined to be a late deposit and considered an operational failure. The 316 fiduciary introduces a repeatable control framework by creating a defined process and the ownership of monitoring payroll timeliness. Another strong fit is PEP and pooled arrangements. PEP and pooled arrangements are increasingly common, and the governance structure of a 316 naturally fits here. And then broadly, any plan sponsor that wants to strengthen their fiduciary governance and reduce their exposure is a good candidate. What responsibilities does a 316 fiduciary take on? I'm going to go into some specifics about what a 316 fiduciary takes on day to day. This can look different for different providers, but we have outlined the foundational elements here. It's important to review and compare what these services look like to ensure it meets your needs. A 316 generally acts as a delegated plan administrator under ERISA, which is a significant responsibility. They oversee eligibility determinations, distributions, and loan administration. They review and distribute required notices and disclosures, making sure everything goes out to the right participants and on time. They also monitor contribution remittances and operational compliance, coordinate with the record keeper and TBA on any corrections that need to happen, and support audits, DOL inquiries, compliance testing, and ensure annual filings are submitted timely. In practice, the 316 becomes the central point of accountability for administrative operations. That removes a significant amount of the day-to-day administrative responsibilities off your team. Next slide. What responsibilities does the employer keep? A really important point we want to drive home: hiring a 316 fiduciary does not eliminate all employer responsibility, meaning it's not a hands-off solution. Plan sponsors still retain what we call settler responsibilities as the primary plan administrator. Settler functions include plan design decisions like setting up the match formula, choosing eligibility requirements, or deciding to add a Roth feature. Plan administrators maintain responsibility for hiring and monitoring fiduciaries and service providers, making timely payroll contributions, and overseeing any responsibilities that hasn't been explicitly delegated. The key takeaway here is that while 316 services meaningfully reduce risk, responsibility is shared, not eliminated. Ensuring clear expectations up front will lend to a much stronger long-term partnership. I'll turn it back to Tiffany to discuss a shift in responsibilities.
Thanks, Suzanne. This is a great visual overview of what changes when a 316 fiduciary comes on board. Take a moment to look at how responsibilities shift. The before and after here is really compelling. On the left side, you see the plan sponsor juggling administrative duties, compliance monitoring, notices, distributions, and more. On the right, many of those responsibilities have shifted to the 316, leaving you as the plan sponsor with a much more focused and manageable set of duties. Next slide. Does the 316 fiduciary replace the TPA or record keeper? This is a question that we get all the time. And the answer is no. You can think of it this way. Each role has a distinct lane. The record keeper handles the processing of participant level transactions, produces account statements, generates annual trust reports, and provides an interface for account level management. The TPA generally produces the plan document, performs annual compliance testing, and completes technical calculations. The 316 provides fiduciary oversight and decision-making authority on the delegated tasks specified in the service agreement. The key concept here is that the 316 sits above the vendors. They ensure the work is being done correctly and compliantly. It's an oversight and governance role, not a replacement for the operational roles that the TPA and record keeper already fill. Adding a 316 strengthens the overall service model. It doesn't replace any part of it. The next piece is how that translates into real impact for you as the plan sponsor, and Suzanne will take us through that next.
Thanks, Tiffany. Okay, let's talk about liability and accountability. This is where plan sponsors feel the most impact. A 316 fiduciary accepts fiduciary responsibilities for the duties it assumes. That's a meaningful transfer of responsibility. In many arrangements, the 316 signs the Form 5500 as plan administrator, using information from the TPA and record keeper. On the audit and DOL side, the 316 serves as the go-to point of contact. They handle documentation, help navigate the process, and support any necessary corrections. Because they take on fiduciary accountability for the delegated duties, they're also the ones engaging directly with regulators, which adds real value for the plan sponsor. Tiffany's going to talk now about the different types of co-fiduciaries.
Yeah, so we'll take a few minutes to talk about how they fit together. Plan sponsors can hire experts to assist with different fiduciary functions, and understanding the options is key. You can bring on a 316 fiduciary for administrative oversight, a 321 investment advisor for investment recommendations, or a 338 investment manager for full discretionary investment management. But here's the critical point. Hiring service providers is itself a fiduciary function. So you can never completely eliminate all fiduciary responsibility. That's why it's so important to review service providers regularly and document that review process. Benchmarking services and fees and reviewing contracts are all part of good fiduciary due diligence. And when you're benchmarking, it's important to compare similar scopes of service because fiduciary service offerings can look very different across providers within the industry. Next slide. So let's talk about the difference between the different co-fiduciaries. So here's a quick and clean way to remember the differences between these fiduciary roles. 316 is all about administration. Think of them as a true partner to you as the plan sponsor in the day-to-day activities to run the plan and help support governance oversight. A 321 is a co-fiduciary investment advisor. They make recommendations on the plan's investments, but as the plan sponsor or trustee, you make the ultimate decision on what that investment lineup will look like. And last but not least is a 338. They are a discretionary investment manager. That means they have full authority over investment selection and monitoring. This way of thinking makes it easier to understand who is responsible for what and where accountability sits. It also helps support clear conversations with your advisors, committees, and other fiduciary partners. So at this point, you may be asking, how does Definity fit into all of this? Suzanne is going to help walk us through that.
Thanks, Tiffany. I love this slide. It clearly delineates what we offer in Definity Complete and Definity Essentials. So I'd like to take a few moments to discuss Definity's 316 offerings. We have a dedicated 316 team that works closely with your TPA retirement plan consultant to support the day-to-day administration activities. We have two service options depending on what level of support makes the most sense for your plan. The first is Definity 316 Complete, which covers 21 ongoing administrative duties handled by the team. This is a great fit for plan sponsors who are looking for a more comprehensive partnership where much of the administrative workload is managed by specialists. The second option is Definity 316 Essentials, which focuses on the 11 areas that tend to create the most challenges for plan sponsors. This is often a good fit for plan sponsors who already have payroll integration in place and are primarily looking for support in the highest impact, most time-consuming areas. Both options are designed to provide meaningful fiduciary support while allowing flexibility based on plan size, complexity, and internal resources. Next slide. Lastly, we're going to shift gears and look at what's happening on the regulatory front. There are some important developments to keep an eye on. First, the DOL has indicated they'll revisit the fiduciary rule in 2026. So stay tuned on that front. We're also tracking the Restoring Integrity and Fiduciary Duty Act, which was introduced in the Senate in late 2025. This bill would require fiduciaries to consider pecuniary factors, meaning factors with a direct material connection to financial risk and return when making investment decisions. This would amend Section 404A of ERISA. The bill also addresses what happens when a fiduciary can't distinguish between two investments using pecuniary analysis alone. Essentially, a coin flip standard for tie breaking, replacing the Biden-era approach that allowed non-pecuniary collateral factors. There's also the Providing Complete Information to Retirement Investors Act. which would require plans to clearly explain the difference between choosing investments from the fund lineup versus using a brokerage window. These are all developments that could impact how your clients' plans operate, so it's worth keeping them on your radar. We're also seeing, especially through 2026, while the rules themselves haven't changed much, the enforcement has gotten a lot more real. The Department of Labor is digging in deeper during audits and now expects plan administrators to not just show that things ended up okay, but there are solid, repeatable processes behind them. They're paying a lot more attention to issues like late contribution deposits, missed eligibility, incomplete or inaccurate 5500s, and oversight issues. That's where a 316 fiduciary can really add value. By having structured processes, controls, and accountability around these high-risk areas and being able to consistently demonstrate that work was done correctly. So the shift is this. It's not just about fixing problems when they happen. It's about proving you had the right controls in place all along. And in today's environment, if plan administrators can't clearly show their processes, even something that feels like a simple administrative mistake can be treated like a fiduciary failure, which is exactly the kind of risk a strong 316 model is designed to help reduce. That's the end of our presentation, but we will now address any questions that may have been raised during while we were presenting.
Okay, we will leave it open for questions for a little bit. Thank you so much. Sorry, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't see any questions popping into the Q&A. So unless anybody has a last minute one that wants to pop it in now, then we will close it out. We covered a lot of ground from the fundamentals of 316 to practical applications and upcoming regulatory changes. So if you have any questions that come up after, please feel free to reach out. You will receive all of this, the video afterwards. So look out for an email recap of all things Academy. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to continue that conversation. You should see a brief feedback survey pop up shortly. We'd really appreciate your input so we can keep making these sessions better for you time after time. So thank you again. I'm going to check one more time into the Q&A and see if we have anything, but I do not see any. So great job, presenters. You covered it all with no questions. Thanks again, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks all.